So talk to us about how things concluded with Todd's time as bishop. How did things end up?
Um, just before he was um, released from being bishop, um, my husband at the time um, threw me out of the house and told me that I'd be doing the world a favor if I threw myself in front of a semi. He then called Bishop Todd and told him what he'd done. So Todd came and picked me up and took me to his house and said, "You'll stay with me. You can get away from him. You don't have to be near him. I'll give you a place to stay." And then I believe he was released from being the bishop a couple weeks later. And the new bishop, you can talk about sitting down with new bishop.
Yeah. Yeah. Leading up to before that point, the things had gotten so bad. The combination of the PTSD and the flashbacks, which is re-experiencing the trauma that she'd had before, and because sleep wasn't happening, she was tired during the day, so she would lay down during the day. She would also go into the flashbacks and re-experience the trauma that she'd had from her first marriage. She was also having hallucinations, where she was being attacked again and she didn't know who was chasing her. And so she would call me on the telephone and I would talk to her and she would go through hallucinations and flashbacks and she didn't know where she was. And this is 10 o'clock at night in the middle of January and she's freezing cold and she just wants to stay there and die. So I could pick her up and take her to her house. And I don't know what's going on. And I don't know that that what's triggering it. Again, I'm not a professional. I'm trying to do the best that I can. So when I was released, I sat down with the bishop and tried to explain to him the situation between Jen and her husband. And 3 hours later, just talking about them, he kind of had an idea of what she'd been dealing with. But it had taken me years to understand the complexities, and talking with her therapist, the eating disorder therapist, and some of the things he said weren't really helpful. Some of the PTSD symptoms were attributed to demonic possessions, and so that wasn't helpful. But I sat down with the new bishop and explained to him the best that I could the situation that she was in and what she'd been dealing with. And I don't think he didn't understand it, but I don't think he could, because he hadn't gone through the experience of that I had with her.
Right. So in this era of Protect LDS Children, of the emphasis in 2018 on how too often bishops cover up abuse, Mormon bishops cover up abuse, protect abusers at the expense of the victims. It's easy to just think that and we also have evidence of bishops or stake presidents or mission presidents being the abusers. We have recent sort of stories of bishops, stake presidents, mission presidents, stake presidents being the abusers. It's easy for us to just get caught in this trap of thinking that all bishops are predators. Mm-hmm. When I think back to your harrowing love and support of Jen, it was as a believing Mormon bishop.
Absolutely, yeah.
And my guess is there are a lot, thousands, tens of thousands of believing Mormon bishops out there that aren't abusers. And like you, they're married, have children, holding down a difficult job, taking care of all the ward responsibilities, and they're providing this extraordinary level of service to their members like you did to Jen. Is it fair to do a shout out to Mormon bishops and the service, the positive service that they do perform?
I think so, and I'd certainly like to think that the majority of bishops fit into that category. I think the majority of bishops are doing the best that they can. Some under very difficult situations. I think they're very committed. There's always bishops that don't fit that category, but I think by far most of the bishops, they're definitely doing the best that they can. But I had limited knowledge. I wasn't qualified to be a family therapist, let alone a eating disorder specialist. But I did the best that I could, and used the resources of the church to help provide for her to go through the eating disorder treatment center again. And it was a lot of money. So there were resources that the church provided that allowed for her to get the treatment she needed.
Got it. Okay. So Jen, let's just talk about how you got better, and then we're going to end with a fun twist to the story. But Jen, how did you get better?
Well, so first basic steps were really like accepting kind of the symptoms as, I don't know how to, they called them pseudo-seizures, but it was hours and hours that looked like a seizure, that I would lay there and I just would let it just happen. And for me, it was, reliving past traumas in my memories, but it was like letting my body shake it out and go through that. And Todd would often sit there with me. So as my bishop, as my friend, as my, he would often sit there with me, and just, there's nothing he could do, but he understood that just being there was helpful. At one point, I started reading books about abuse and what healthy relationships looked like, and I came to the conclusion that the most abusive relationship I had was the one I had with the church, and I was not going to recover from past abuses as long as I stayed in that relationship. So I had to end the relationship I had with the church, and that helped. And then along with that, telling family members and friends that I was no longer doing things to keep them happy, and becoming okay enough with myself that if they didn't love me, I was okay. I'd just have to find new family. It didn't work out that way. When I told my family that I was leaving the church, they actually were, my dad said, "I support you, I love you, you're happy, or I see the light in your eyes, and I'd rather have you than have you be a member." So
Your dad said that?
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah, my dad responded exactly the way a dad should respond.
So I guess it makes sense. And here on Mormon Stories, we want to always allow for legitimate belief that a Mormon experience, an active LDS experience, can be super healthy and positive for some people. So it isn't to say that for everyone, leaving Mormonism means you're going to be healthy and happy and healing.
No. For me, the relationship was abusive. That doesn't mean the relationship that everyone has is abusive.
Right.
For me, I could not find healing within the structure. And so
if Mormonism meant to you that you are broken, that love is conditional, that you're to blame when bad things happen, that you're responsible for what other people do, that you are powerless, that you are weak, that you're lesser than, that if you have anything other than perfect, idealized sexual experiences, that somehow you're dirty and unclean and unworthy, that if you get divorced, that you're somehow defective, that if you're not in an eternal family, that somehow your salvation in the next life is in jeopardy.
If there's ever a problem, then your relationship with the church is always you. The church never takes responsibility for any problems. If you don't get the right answers to your prayers, the problem is you. They tell you, if you believe that when they tell you what to think and what to believe and what to do, and you can't have your own thoughts, that's all abusive. And I know that for some people that they don't fit into that, and I know that. So that for me was a very big choice that was healthier for me. And my family was super supportive, which also opened up so that I could talk to them, start telling them kind of what was happening. My family wasn't ready to hear the real, like, nitty-gritty awfulness of even the not sleeping and the pseudo-seizures and the flashbacks. They weren't ready for a long, and I don't blame them. It's tough to deal with, it's tough to hear. So, but to start building a relationship with them, and then...
Did you have to deconstruct your LDS beliefs to be able to feel comfortable leaving? Was that a part of it?
Yes.
How did you do that?
I sent you an email.
Oh, wow. That's not where I was leading.
I know, but I'm sure you don't remember because I wouldn't even use my real name back then. But, so this is actually, Todd's no longer the bishop. We're friends. He's in therapy, and his therapist gave him the video, Why People Leave the Mormon Church, which he sent to me. So why people leave, and so it's like, you didn't even have my reason. I sent the email. You didn't even have my reason, and you added me as this fake person that I had created just so I could email you. Added me as a friend on Facebook and added me to the Mormon Stories community, which back then was like 100 people.
Oh, wow.
It was teeny. So I eventually came in as myself, but that was where and as soon as I started talking to people that were kind of paying attention, then it was easy to deconstruct and be like, oh, okay, I'll be fine.
Why'd you reach out to me? Like what?
The big reason was that video, Why People Leave, and I was like, you don't even have like the emotional abuse that it was for me. Like, why didn't you put that in there? That's a really good reason to leave.
You thought about that. Why didn't I put non-historical issues as reasons to leave?
Yeah, and this is back like 2009.
Yeah, and you wanted me to say, hey, there are other reasons people leave.
Yes.
Besides polygamy, Book of Abraham.
Whatever the five were that were back then.
Right.
So, but by getting added to the Mormon Stories podcast community, I found people that helped me kind of deconstruct it and helped me kind of sort out what I believed and what I thought. And maybe it was 2010. I don't know. Anyway, I was deconstructing.
Yeah. It seems like that'd be an important part of breaking the chains of belief, so that you could feel comfortable taking that big step to heal, right?
Right. Because
you have to stop drinking the poison
before you
can heal, right?
Yeah. So.
And for you, the church was toxic. For you.
For me.
Yeah.
And I am careful. I know it's not for
right.
my family. They are happy there, and I love that they're happy there, and I support them in their membership, and I even go play the piano once a year to go accompany somebody singing or something. So
your family was actually supportive.
Super supportive. So that was a helpful place. I found horses, which riding horses kind of helped me trust another being in a way I never had before. It also helped, I think, just the movement and going through the mountains and to distract me from all the pain of the PTSD stuff at that point. Am I leaving things out?
Oh, that's it. So you left the church, felt that love from your family, got the treatment you needed, found horses and other things, and wrote and communicated and was able to...
Yeah. And I'm still in therapy. I'm currently doing equine-assisted EMDR.
What is equine-assisted therapy?
Equine-assisted therapy is, I think it's amazing. But so there are different ways to do it. My therapist is actually a PhD. She specializes in trauma, and she brings her horses, and it's kind of like magic. The best example I have is that I was telling some story about getting pushed around. I wasn't using those words. Meanwhile, the horse is behind me with her head, keeps pushing me. And so until I finally get to this point where I'm so tired of being pushed around, at which point the horse walks around, puts her head in my chest, and I cried into the horse's fur, hair, whatever it's called. And meanwhile, and the therapist then helps you process that, what just happened with this horse. That is amazing. So that's equine assisted, and then EMDR is the
eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy. What is that?
Also seems really crazy. It's either moving so your eyes follow her hand, or she also has done tapping on my hands. So she'll hold my hand and tap back and forth. So it uses both sides of the brain, and there's not much talking and a whole lot of like emotional processing.
And believe me, as a trained psychologist, learning about EMDR for the first time, and even its reputation, it's easy to think that this is some sort of pseudo-science, like foot zoning. Maybe some think of foot zoning or Reiki or other types of things, alternative medicines that maybe don't have empirical support. EMDR is actually one of the empirically supported evidence-based treatments for PTSD, and it's even been approved by the Veterans Administration that deals with PTSD more than probably anyone in the United States. And I don't think therapists or scientists even totally understand why this EMDR works, where either you're following the eyes back and forth as you're talking and processing, or there's a light that gets used where the light gets shown back and forth and your eyes follow the light. Or I've done EMDR, and I've actually held these little sensors or nodes where vibration switches between the two nodes. And so you're feeling these vibrations in each hand as it switches back and forth. There are different ways, but the way it kind of works is this bilateral stimulation of the brain. We tend to be left-brained or right-brained, and somehow we can get stuck in our left brain, which is analytical or logical, and miss the emotional processing that often is essential to healing. And so somehow, and walking can even serve this purpose. There's some therapists that take people out on walks and do the therapy while they're walking. And just that left-right movement of walking invokes this bilateral stimulation of the brain that somehow facilitates deeper emotional processing that can lead to the healing. That's my understanding of EMDR, and it's different than hokey, non-scientific, non-empirically supported methods of treatment. Anything you want to add to that?
No, but I do think that the bilateral stimulation is also why horses were so helpful. That riding horses, because it's the same, the movement is the same as if you're walking, but it's, so there's also evidence to support that one. But it feels kind of hokey going through it, but it seems to be really helpful for me. So
it was for you.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's brilliant.
So.
Okay, so you are much better, and you're still in the process of healing. Mm-hmm. Have you? Well, I'll ask you a couple questions at the end. Anything else you want to say about your journey before we turn back?
Nope.
No? Okay.
I don't think so.
So Todd, you had your own journey after leaving your position as bishop. Tell us what happened in your life, because you're not in the same place you were when you were a believing bishop. So tell us about your journey.
Wow. Well,
that's probably its own story, right?
What's that?
That's probably its own story.
It's its own story, yeah, because being involved in Jen's healing was very strenuous on me personally. And serving as a scoutmaster, I remember hearing stories of scouts being caught in flood in Zion's Narrows, and where a scoutmaster would jump in to save a scout. And so my philosophy was, I would rather die myself than allow a member of my troop to die without me trying to help them. And that was kind of the attitude that I took in as bishop. So I did as much as I could to help Jen and other members of my ward. And it took a toll on me, and I ended up in therapy to try to deal with my own issues. And at the same time, came to my own realization about the truth claims of the church. And now that I've been released as bishop, I examined some of the issues that I'd placed on a shelf, and ended up coming away with a different point of view about the church and its claims to be true.
So after serving as a Mormon bishop,
Yeah.
you were exposed to issues around the church's truth claims.
Yeah, a lot of it began when Jen was going through the pseudo-seizures, as she describes them, where she'd lay in a fetal position on the ground and just cry and cry, and some of the positions as if she was being raped. Her hands would gnarl up in balls, and I would give her a blessing, and it didn't work. And I'd give her another blessing, and that didn't work. And I would pray, and that didn't work. And this went on for a year and a half or 2 years.
So you were trying to exercise the priesthood as you had been taught.
And I had all the faith in the world.
Someone would say apparently not enough. What would you say to that?
Well, at that time, I don't know that it's physically possible to have any more than I did.
And you were noticing what effect of your priesthood power has exercised?
Nothing. She continued to have these pseudo-seizures, and she would dissociate, and to help relieve. And again, I didn't know anything about this until I experienced it and studied it and discovered that the mind goes back into a place where the trauma had occurred. And it's very real to her. And so to bring her back to the present, I would take a piece of ice and put it on her neck and shock her back to the present. Or I would ask her questions that required her to use the thinking part of her brain. I would ask her what her phone number was or what her social security number was to bring her back from these seizures that she was going through, to give her, to stop them. But because they were being triggered by sleep, and she was tired constantly because she wasn't able to sleep, these seizures went on for, she said hours, but they were days and months. And she wanted to die, and it reached a point where I was like, death is better than what you're going through. And so those were things that I had to deal with.
And that then started challenging your faith?
It started challenging my faith, and I examined the issues in the church's history and the doctrines that I saw as being conflicted. And the Book of Abraham was an issue for me, as well as issues with the Book of Mormon and elephants and tapirs and all the explanations that I then began to examine from a more independent perspective, look at things that I had forbidden myself to look at before because they caused doubt, and then it all came tumbling down.
So it was priesthood power not working, plus challenges to the Book of Mormon's historicity, like anachronisms,
Mm-hmm.
the Book of Abraham not being a translation
Mm-hmm.
as we had been taught.
Mm-hmm.
Those were the main things?
Those were the main things.
What about Joseph Smith's polygamy?
I learned about that later when I
Okay.
knew he was a polygamist, but I wasn't aware of all of the details until I read Compton's book and other various things that,
Okay, later on.
yeah.
So how did that affect your life, losing your faith?
It affected it quite a bit because of my family is still very believing and very faithful. At the same time, I went through a divorce. Well, I left the church.
Partly because of that?
No, because I was in a relationship that I wasn't happy. Gotten married when I got off my mission, because that was what I needed to do, was supposed to do, and just wasn't happy, and so the therapist I was meeting with told me that I needed to live my life in an authentic way and be who I am and stop living my life to make other people happy. And my
Was
kids,
this after you lost your faith?
at the same time,
So the divorce happened parallel to losing your
my
faith?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and I
What if
realized
somebody were to say, well, that's it. You study anti-Mormon literature, then you get divorced.
they weren't related. Yeah, they weren't related at all. I mean, it was my decision to divorce. It wasn't my wife's decision to divorce. So if you want to know why I divorced, ask me. And it had nothing to do with me losing. She was willing to allow me to leave the church. She gave me permission that I could do that. And that was part of the problem, was that she felt like I needed to ask her permission to live my life.
So what if someone were to say, okay, well then you lose your faith, and so now you don't value marriage and your spouse anymore. You kind of throw away your family, as you're throwing away all these other beliefs.
I'd say, don't put words in my mouth. Don't put thoughts into my head.
Right.
You want to know, I'll tell you. Don't project your silly notions on me.
Right. So again, what kept you from trying to make the marriage work?
I did. I tried to make the marriage work. And initially she wouldn't go to counseling with me. When I told her I was going to leave the marriage, if she didn't, she finally did go to counseling with me. But for reasons I don't want to get into, the marriage didn't work out. But it didn't. The issue with the church would have been an issue that she had, and she didn't. That wasn't an issue for her with me leaving the church. So my issues of divorce were issues I had with her. It didn't have anything to do with the church.
And as you're unpacking your experience, we've talked about Jen's, is there an extent to which whatever Mormon wave you got swept up to that led to your marriage, maybe you didn't have the best setup that would have led to the type of marriage and the type of life you maybe looking back could have had if you had been able to make other choices at the time?
Yeah, and that's looking back and projecting into the future is all hypothetical. But I'm sure that would have had different results, different life. But I didn't, and those decisions that I made, and I don't regret them. And certainly would have been a different path had I made different decisions.
What I kind of mean is sometimes Mormons marry their best friend and they have a great marriage, and whether the church falls away or not, they're best friends, and so the marriage is super awesome. Other people get married, they serve their mission, the mission president says get married immediately. Right. You get home, find the first breathing woman that thinks you're attractive and you think she's attractive. You certainly don't want to have sex, so you hurry and get married, and then you're in a marriage that may not be a good fit.
My situation was the latter. We had dated in high school, and then I went on my mission, and she dated while I was gone, and I came back, and her current boyfriend had gone on a mission, and so it was kind of a Mormon Cinderella story. And so, so the feelings I had for her before my mission were gone, but that's what I needed to do. That was the Mormon path, and it wasn't my decision. It's what the Lord wants me to do.
How fast did you get married after your mission?
Oh, 8 weeks, 6 weeks.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So less than 2 months after getting home, you're married.
Yep.
At age 21.
20. I had the 18-month option on my mission.
Oh my goodness. And how old was she when you got married?
Let's see, 20.
Yeah. And just one quick therapist little jump in. One of the things that science and evidence has shown is people who tend to get married later have a better chance of both a happy, fulfilling marriage and the marriage lasting. But there is an association between early marriage and an increased likelihood of both marital dissatisfaction and divorce.
Yeah. Yeah. It was tough.
Yeah. So some might say maybe this is a person you should have maybe never married.
And I would say, yeah, I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
But I did, and I've got wonderful children and grandchildren as a result, and so I don't regret that.
Right.
I wish that I would have had someone tell me there's another option.
Like what?
Like, why don't you think about this? You just got home from your mission. Why don't you go to school? Why don't you, date other people? There's another option other than graduate high school, go on a mission, get married, and have kids and serve in the church.
Right.
Just a little detour in there, would have made a big difference.
Right. So tell us about the happy ending, or at least as we stand today.
Oh, well, after I was released from the bishop, as bishop, and Jen had 2 other bishops, and she mentioned horseback riding, and I have a love of horses, and we ended up stabling our horses at the same place, and she went through a divorce, and I went through a divorce, and then we got together and rode horses, and now we're best friends, and live together in a great little place.
Maybe more than just best friends.
Maybe more, but
partners. Is it fair to say?
I like partners.
Yeah, I like partners, life partners.
I have a lot of baggage with the word marriage, so don't plan on ever going there again. But I really like best friends. I really like partners.
Okay, so how does a bishop and a former member of the ward get together?
Well, I think that's a big question. But when there's a lot of truth that you love the people that you serve, and so there was. I did what I did because of a sense of obligation, but there was also love. And
so you grew to love Jen.
Grew to love Jen.
Okay.
Yeah. I guess that's the biggest factor.
So I remember, because for me, his daughter asked him the question, why don't you call Jen your girlfriend? Because she pretty much is. Like, you're spending all this time together, you're hanging out together, you're horseback riding, and by that time I was working for him, and so we're spending a lot of time together, and I had a panic attack because I didn't want to be anybody's girlfriend. But then I was like, well, I guess I pretty much am. So it's kind of...
So how did it go from former bishop to friend to companion for you? How did that...
Well, being in therapy together, or not together, being in therapy at the same time, he's doing kind of these same kind of assignments that I'm doing. So we'd either talk about it or email back and forth about it, or we'd be out with our horses, and we planned a ride at the same time, and he sat down and he's like, I have an assignment to define my boundaries. And so we sat out there with our horses while he tried to define his boundaries, and I was like, boundaries? What are those? I guess we better figure that out. So it was kind of like going through that process for me that it was, I don't know, we just were, and for me, it was having somebody, I trusted him, like, that I, laid there having these shaking pseudo seizures where I was completely incapacitated, and all he did was be there with me. I trusted him that I was safe. He was not going to hurt me in any way. That's a pretty big deal. So, he was released as my bishop in 2008, I think. So this is a lot of time has
And you
passed.
started dating when? Or started
It was
realizing...
2013 when his daughter said she's pretty much your girlfriend. So that was 5 years ago that his daughter was like, why don't you just claim this?
And was that weird for you to fall in love with your former bishop?
Only if I think about it.
Okay.
Yeah.
It felt natural because you cared about each other.
Yeah. And by that point, it's kind of that we've been through a whole lot of life and friendship. So it wasn't, I admit it's a little bit strange running into old ward members that I have this moment of like, but other than that, it just
And I
feels-
don't think you can choose who you love. You can choose who you spend time with, but you can't choose who you love any more than you can choose what kind of ice cream you like. So, yeah, I spent time with her, and I couldn't help but care for her and love her.
Anne writes, hey Anne, finding a feeling of safety in a spouse after abusive experiences is such a gift. Is that true, Jen?
Yes.
How has this relationship been different than the other relationships?
Such a world of difference that it's hard to explain, but I mean, I can show my own emotions and show anger, and he just rolls with it, and we talk about everything. And because I'm dealing with PTSD stuff, like, I really am talking about everything. And so because I still have some of those automatic reactions where he gets slightly irritated, I suddenly am full of fear, and I can say, I'm pretty afraid right now, and he can, and instead of getting upset himself, it listens and
Talk through it.
talks through it.
Yeah.
So I really, that's one, I like the word partners, because I really feel like I have a partner in this life journey.
How do you feel? How's it different from your previous marriage? Todd?
Yeah, it's not even the same. I mean, it's hard to compare them. It's like two different existences, two different lives.
What do you love about it? What do you love about this marriage or this relationship?
The freedom to be able to talk. I mean, as Jen said, we can talk about anything, and I feel very safe and secure in discussing my issues or my frustrations, or and also being able to own my own mistakes. That I hope that I'm open enough that if she's irritated by something that I've said or hurt by something that I've done, that I can listen to that. I'm in a place where I can, man up and take responsibility for things that I do that might be hurtful, I guess. But it's very caring. I feel very, very loved by Jen, and get along really well together. I guess that's I'd say there's, in marriages talk about there's ups and downs, and I think that there are ups and downs in life, but that doesn't mean that you take somebody mistreating you. That's not an up and down that's healthy. To be mistreated and then not be mistreated, that's not a healthy up and down in a marriage relationship. A healthy up and down is something that isn't caused by the relationship. Sickness and death and birth of children and financial problems, those are ups and downs that a couple health can deal with. But if you're being hurt by your spouse and then he doesn't, or she yells at you and screams at you and throws things at you and then she doesn't, those aren't the ups and downs of a healthy relationship.
That's abuse.
That's abuse.
Yeah.
I've heard somebody say that life is hard, marriage shouldn't be.
I like that.
And so I don't know how that works outside of, but it's like, you're not hurting each other in the relationship. You're taking care of each other. And so life is hard outside of it, and the relationship should make life better.
Yeah.
And yet marriage is hard, and your partners will hurt you.
Yeah.
But I guess it's a matter of knowing the line between normal disagreement and ups and downs and frustrations, and knowing that there is a line that if it's crossed,
Yeah.
needs to be dealt with with professionals, with the law, whatever it is.
Whatever it takes, yeah.
Yeah, with whatever it takes. Jen, I'm going to ask you a personal question. Feel free to not answer it or to answer it as little or as much as you want. Because sexuality is such an important part of life, and because you experience so much sexual trauma, what are you comfortable sharing about healing in that regard and, going from where sex was associated with just trauma and sadness and anger and hurt and rape to, have you been able to heal from that where sex has meant something different for you? I know it's a personal question, and you can say you don't want to talk about it, or you can say I haven't healed yet, or whatever you want. I just want to make sure you feel fully comfortable.
I'm trying to think what I want to talk about, because, so for, I can't remember, Kendall's, what's his video, the Far Between?
Kendall Wilcox?
Yeah. For Far Between, I actually did a video 4 or 5 years ago, coming out as asexual. And almost to that one saying, like, it's fine. Like, I'm okay that I don't need sexual experiences. But I can also say I have felt sexual attraction for one person and one person only. And so it's lucky that I'm in a relationship with him. So that's about all I want to say, though.
Okay. So, there's a place in life for sex not being an important part of it, and that's what being asexual is, and that's fine. And for someone who has experienced trauma, there can be, you can find someone where that can become an enjoyable thing.
Mm-hmm. And so for me, like, I look at, when I came out as asexual, Todd and I were we were living together at that point. We were together as partners, and that was a part of our agreement at the time, was that that's what our relationship was. So I feel like, and I know that there's a lot of people that wouldn't enter into a relationship knowing that's part of the agreement. So again, party likes me. So I don't quite know what to say, because I'm still kind of learning, figuring out what I feel and what I want. So
the journey continues.
Exactly.
Continues. Life goes on.
All right. Well, I want to give each of you a chance. Well, first of all, I want to thank everyone who's tuned in. We've had a lot of listeners tuning in, giving comments. We really appreciate the support. Please, please share this interview with others. Please like the Mormon Stories podcast Facebook page. Please give us a positive review. There are lots of ways you can help us, and we appreciate that support. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. If you want to be notified every time a Mormon Stories podcast episode starts live, you can follow the Mormon Stories podcast page and actually ask it to update you, to follow it. And if you like it and follow, you'll be notified. But thanks to everyone for joining us. What I want to give you both a chance to do to close is to give just a little bit of final perspective, either wisdom you want to share or perspective you want to share, because there are a lot of people, who are listening, who have been abused, who have been in tough marriages, who have been bishops, who have gone through faith crises. There's a lot, that our listeners are dealing with, and that's why many of them tune in to the podcast. So for any of those constituencies, people in tough marriages, whatever it is, I want to give you each a final chance to kind of share some closing thoughts or encouragement or wisdom for our audience. Who wants to go first?
You're at the last word? Second to last word.
Penultimate word or ultimate word?
I'm still thinking.
So, the journey that I went through, it was hell. It was full of anxiety and stress, and as I left the church, my kids didn't want to have anything to do with me, very little to do with me. They didn't want me to have much contact with my grandkids, and it was really, really hard. So the only thing I can say is it gets better. Things are a lot better. Got a great relationship with my children and my grandchildren, and they know where I stand with the church, and I know where they stand, and I'm glad that they're happy, and I think that they're glad that I'm happy too, and I hope that people can find the same happiness in whatever journey that they're on, but it does get a lot better. From wanting to seeing suicide as my only option out. And I had a great therapist. My home bishop advised me not to go to a therapist. I'm really glad that I did.
Because you were suicidal.
I was suicidal. Losing I was losing my family. I was losing my faith. And my kids didn't want anything to do with me. And I was suicidal. But my therapist saved my life in the way I credit it. And so, see a therapist, see a professional. My bishop counseled me against that, because the gospel was the answer. The gospel held the keys to happiness. So therapist, very helpful, and I got a lot better, and it's really good now. Yeah.
So hold on,
hang in there.
Don't give up. See a professional.
Yep. I gave up on trying to keep everybody happy, and gave up on caring what other people thought about me. Do as much as I could so far. And don't give up. Hang in there. It gets better.
Love it.
Yeah, it's a lot better.
Thank you, Todd.
Yeah.
Before you answer, Jen, people are asking if any of your abusers ever, were punished by the law or had any disciplinary action or anything that you know of in terms of, their abuse.
Well, my husband, Todd was the bishop, had ecclesiastical punishment, and
for his abuse.
Okay. And he has worked so hard. I didn't stay married to him for lots of reasons, some of them being my own sexuality and I needed space and leaving the church and all of that, and also that I didn't know how to feel safe around him anymore. But he did a lot of work. He went through a true repentance process and is a different person today. And I'm really grateful for the work he's done. And I'm still close friends with him because of the true, real, repentance and working through it that he did.
This is the same guy who was violent.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. He
is changed.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So
that's a great ending.
Yeah, and so I was thinking, it's how do I put this in here? So I'm glad somebody asked, because he did face those consequences, and as he was close to engagement with a woman and wanted her to come sit down and talk to me, and was honest with her, and then wanted her to come sit down and talk to me, and he said, don't hold anything back. Any questions she has, be honest with her, because I want her to know what I've done and who I've been, and so that she can also trust that I'm working and that I will never be that again. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful.
Big change.
Yeah.
What a great part to the story. What a great happy part ending of the story.
Yeah. So, which again, abuse. So people don't stay abusers. They can go through some change if they actually get
help.
Yeah. I love it. All right. Well, take us home, Jen. Give us any closing wisdom you want to give to victims of abuse, to people with PTSD, to people with eating disorders, to people who lose their faith, to people in bad marriages. You've given us so much, but is there any final words you want to share? I'm thinking about
those moments of feeling totally worthless, which kind of all those things, that was the culmination, was I felt totally like I was worthless and I was wrong. And so if somebody else is feeling that way, you're wrong. You have worth, not because of anything. Just who you are is worth so much. And when you realize that, you'll do amazing and great things. And also, I mean, I have a lifetime full of abuse, and I'm sitting here and I'm actually pretty happy. And I have a lifetime of pretty severe mental disorders from dissociation and PTSD, and I'm sitting here pretty okay. And so it's totally possible to not have that run your life forever. And it's a journey you can get through and get help.
All right. I love it. I'm so happy you guys made it through, and I'm so happy you found each other.
So are we.
And I'm really grateful, honestly, that you would both be willing to share your stories with us, because not only is this going to help abuse victims, it's going to help abusers, it's going to help people who are loved ones and supporters of abuse victims and abusers. And we hope that somewhere a bishop or church leaders or Relief Society presidents or members of wards, wherever, family members, anyone who's involved with loved ones with abuse will learn from this story and treat the abuse victims and abusers more effectively.
Yeah.
And I think your story is going to help make that happen. So thank you.
Thanks for having us.
All right, everyone. We want to thank you for tuning in. This has been so powerful. They're hugging each other. Shoot back to them. I want to get that hug on camera. That's the good stuff. We're so happy to see you guys smiling.
Thanks.
Nice job. All right. We caught you. You thought you were off camera.
I was off camera.
But you weren't. All right. Thanks for joining us today. You know that we can't do this without your support. So if you're not a donor to Mormon Stories, please consider going to mormonstories.org, clicking on the donate button. $10 a month, $50 a month, $100 a month, anything you can afford keeps us in business. We have 3 full-time staff members now, Tim Corey, Amy Grubbs, and myself. And we also have Cody Layton helping us with audio video editing, and Sharon Price, who helps with events. And this nonprofit can't exist without support. So please consider contributing today, becoming a monthly donor. We are transparent on our finances. We release our financial reports every year. We release more than we need to make sure you understand how your money is being spent. All the money that you give goes towards the mission of the foundation, of the Open Stories Foundation, which is to provide resources, healing, community, and support for people experiencing or impacted by religious transition. And we'll keep following up on this mission for as long as you guys are willing to support us. You can support us by liking our Facebook page, Mormon Stories Podcast, by leaving a positive review on the Mormon Stories Podcast page, by going to iTunes and giving us a positive rating on iTunes on Mormon Stories Podcast. You can like or follow us on Instagram, on Facebook, also on Twitter. Please sign up for our newsletter if you want to be notified of events and other cool opportunities as well. Please consider, again, if you are struggling or someone you love is struggling with their faith transition, in their marriage, with their mental health, whatever it is. Again, remember, we're coming to Boise May 18th and 19th. We'd love to see you there for our workshop. We're doing a deep workshop, Park City, June 8th through 10th. You can sign up there. And then Houston is July 13th and 15th. Idaho Falls, August 10th and 11th. And then the Bahamas Cruise. You can go to mormonstories.org/events, learn about these events, and register now. There are still some slots open, so we would love to have you. Please spread the word. Share Mormon Stories Podcast with family and friends. Anyone who thinks could benefit, please share episodes. Please share this on your wall, tweet, Instagram, whatever you can. We don't pay for advertising right now. Maybe in the future we will, but right now we don't. So we rely on word of mouth advertising. So anything you can do to let other people know about these resources is great. Thanks again for tuning in. We're going to be doing many more stories and episodes in the months and years ahead. So thanks for tuning in. Please email us at mormonstories@gmail.com. Please go to mormonstories.org to comment on this episode and other episodes. And we'll see you again soon on Mormon Stories Podcast. Thanks, everybody. Have a great day.